Hiya! Thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to answer a couple more questions that were sent to me through YouTube, so thanks so much for everyone who sent those to me. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'd love to hear some more questions or anything else that people want to ask me about anything really. Happy to hear any questions at any time. So thanks so much today to everyone who sent the questions in. First question is from Newton Burr, so we'll start off with a biggie really. Very difficult question to answer. So this question from Newton goes as follows. When you are dressed, do you or will you allow yourself to be held and tenderly loved by a man in a non-sexual way? No, is the short answer to that question. To go into a bit more depth about things, let's run through a couple of subjects. I'm not a big one for. The simplest answer to that question is, I'm not a big one for hugging. I'm not a touchy-feely type person anyway. So let's ignore the fact that, regardless of whether it's sexual or non-sexual, let's ignore the sort of the fact of my marriage situation and everything else. Let's put that to one side and say that isn't the truth, and that isn't the case. So let's ignore that for a second. Even if I were single, I'm not a big hugger. I'm not someone who hugs and likes to have that kind of let's say that kind of intimacy. It really isn't my thing. So as an offer, even leaving aside all the circumstances of my life, it's something that doesn't necessarily appeal. So hopefully it's a fairly straightforward answer to your question. I hope that hasn't caused you any particular concerns or issues, but yeah, that's the easiest answer to that question. Okay, next question is from Paul, otherwise known as MrPabloallitt on YouTube. And the question from Paul is, do you think that dressing will be part of you forever? And this is an interesting question. I want to spend a little bit of time with this question because I've had various conversations with people who talk about what is dressing like, who's dressing for. So there are all sorts of us in this community. Okay, so I'm going to go on a little bit of a soapbox on this one. So there are all sorts of us in this community. I'm in my 40s. I don't think I look like I'm in my 40s. I think I look a little bit younger than that when I go out dressed. And that's certainly true for most people. Most guys who get dressed up as women and go out, to my mind, they tend to look younger than they are. I think that's just genuinely the case. And I have a bit of a problem with some people in our trans community who think this is only for the young and the beautiful. And I get that there are all sorts of people who look at different members of the trans community. We're a very large community, very diverse. There are lots of different types of us. We range from people who you could best describe as fetishists to people who you could best describe as being genuine, dysphoric, trapped in the wrong body, need to physically change themselves. There's a huge gap, and we're all kind of lumped in together as being trans. And what it is to be trans is remarkably different. You've got those guys who will put on a pair of their wife's knickers. I don't identify with those guys. I don't identify with them because that's not me. The same way I don't identify with loads of other people in the world who I don't share their feelings about certain things, but they're part of a wider trans community. And I know a lot of people within our community like to sort of parcel us up and say, well, I'm in this bit and you're in that bit, and so we are a little bit different. And I've had a few conversations with people where they think it's a young person's game. And this question of, do you think your dressing will be part of you forever? I really do think it will. I've got no reason to think that doing what I do now, that I would be doing things differently when I'm 70. It's hard for me to imagine myself being 70. I don't imagine myself being 70 at all. But when I am, there's no evidence that says I'm going to do anything different. Why would I do something different? And I just wanted to touch onto this subject of how people can assume that some people don't put in enough effort, some people put in too much effort. And I know it's a bit tangential to the question, but I really wanted to touch on this one because it is a bit of a problem for me. There are beautiful, beautiful trans girls out there. There are gorgeous trans guys out there. You know, we're in all sorts of different types. But then there are people who go out to a club and I don't like how they're dressed based on my taste. Like I walk down the street and I see people and I don't like how they're dressed. I don't like their clothes. But in the same way that I wouldn't walk up to someone on the street and say to them, I don't like how you're dressed, I also wouldn't judge someone, and I certainly wouldn't criticize someone who has the courage to go out and present themselves on a night out into a community. My own personal preference is towards trans girls who make a lot of effort, who really do put time and effort into how they dress. But at the same time, some of the nicest people I know are people who will throw on a skirt and a bit of lipstick and go out. And it's horses for courses. There's room for everyone in the community. And I think that's something that we occasionally need to sort of take a step back and think about. You don't have to associate with people who, you know, in the same way that I don't associate with people who I don't necessarily identify with, or who have viewpoints or ways of looking at the world that I don't like, or in some cases I can't stand. There are room for all of us in the community, and I think we should all be encouraged to present ourselves and go out and be as happy as we can make ourselves. And circling back to the question via the route of this really quite tangential aside, I would say that I cannot understand what event would lead me to stop dressing up and going out. Time creeps very slowly. We get old very, very slowly. And I don't know, one day I might look in the mirror and think, you're too old for this. I hope I don't. I really hope I don't. And I'd like to maintain, you know, whatever I can for as long as I possibly can. But we'll see. So that's it wasn't quite what your question was, Paul, but circling around things, I think it's it prompts a wider discussion about what people are in this for. I'm not in it for the thrills of the occasional night out. I don't do it just for attention or anything else like that. I do this because it genuinely makes me happy. And with that in mind, I don't anticipate a point in my future where it doesn't make me happy. And so if I'm going to stop doing it, it will have to have been because it stops making me happy. And I don't know when that will be. But who knows? I can't speak for the future. In my mind, it should never happen. And I hope it never happens. But thank you for that question, Paul. So 2 questions dealt with there. Thank you, Newton, and to Paul for those 2. Slightly different in their own ways, and yeah, but interesting questions and good little subjects to talk about quickly here today. So thank you very much for those 2 questions. And thank everyone who's sent me any other questions. I will get around to answering all of them eventually. Like I said at the start of the video, I welcome as many questions as you can send me. Please bombard me with questions. At the moment, I'm getting a very, very nice amount to be able to answer them all in videos. Would be nice to be able to, let's say, select a few based on longer videos and shorter videos. That would be really, really good. But Thank you very much to everyone who sent them so far, and I really look forward to hearing from some more of you again in the future. So thanks so much for joining me today. It's been great talking to you, and as ever, bye!